amigos y amigas, con motivo del festival STARMUS, que es un festival que mezcla música y ciencia, que va a ocurrir en la isla de La Palma entre los días 25 y 29 del mes de abril de 2025, subo este vídeo de una entrevista que pude hacer en Bratislava en el previo STARMUS a una persona que admiro muchísimo. Se trata de Jane Goodall, que seguramente conozcan por sus trabajos con chimpancés, una auténtica pionera en el estudio del comportamiento de estos animales, conviviendo, como cuentan sus libros, con ellos durante más de una década. Es una auténtica leyenda viva de la biología y también de la ciencia, y tuve el grandísimo honor de poder hablar con ella de forma tranquila durante una hora. Y en esta conversación salieron cosas súper interesantes, así que les dejo la entrevista íntegra para que la puedan disfrutar. Para todos ustedes, en exclusiva, Jane Goodall, hablando sobre la ciencia, sobre el mundo y muchísimas más cosas. De verdad que es una entrevista que se la van a gozar. Que por cierto, Jane Goodall va a estar también en el Festival STARMUS de La Palma, así que si quieres conocerla ya sabes, el Festival de La Palma STARMUS, 25 al 29 de abril de 2025. Ahora sí que sí, disfruten de esta entrevista en pleno porque la van a gozar.
So thank you, Jane, for having this time with me. So first of all, how are you doing? Are you doing great?
I've been doing fine. I've just overused my voice, and but it started during COVID, because for 2.5 years I didn't have one day off, no weekend, no holiday, and up to 4 Zooms a day.
Wow.
And my voice suffered.
Yeah, I imagine. This is
And
impressive.
now I'm using it all the time, every day, lectures and meetings and.
But your voice is important for the world.
Well, I know, so what am I going to do if it goes?
Yeah.
We'd have to resort to writing more books.
Yeah. In fact, your voice is more than just this physical mechanism. Your voice is image. It's like Einstein, it's there, it's eternal.
I don't know about that.
No, it's really beautiful because the other day I was saying to you that it was really just your presence created an atmosphere that was really impressive, and this is part, I imagine, of your legacy. You created a whole idea, a whole voice. How do you feel about it?
Well, like I say, there's 2 Janes, and I don't know how this has happened, except that I believe I was put on this planet with a mission. And then I tried to do what I think I'm here for. And it's changed a bit. To start off, it was explaining that animals, we're part of the animal kingdom, not separate, which I was told at Cambridge. We were completely separate. And the chimps helped to prove that that isn't true. And then secondly, now people, if they all lose hope, like many people are, then we're doomed, because without hope, why bother?
I know it's a difficult question, but what is life for you?
What is life? My life is something to be used for good. But life, well, it's opposed to unliving matter. Life we find in trees and plants and fungi, and of course animals and people, but not really in stones.
From your whole life, our link with animals, or even our representation of animals, has changed. And do you have any experience that made this change for you? The day you said probably animals are a different thing than we thought?
No, because I always knew it. Remember, I had my dog as a child. He taught me. I mean, I don't believe, I honestly don't think the scientists believed that animals didn't have personalities, minds, or emotions. They can't have believed it, unless they were totally blind. So, from the very, very beginning, I loved animals. I spent hours out in the garden, and I was lucky there was no television, no social media. So I learned from nature and books.
Is there any experience that taught you something about your own life? Any experience that you had in the wild that made a big impact in your philosophy of life?
Well, I don't know that it impacted it, but the most amazing things were those moments out in nature when, if you're alone, you can forget yourself and you become part of nature. It's hard to explain, But if you're with one other person, even somebody you love, it's not the same. Then it's two people in nature. If it's just you, well, you're just part of nature. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Good.
But then nature, I got a little bit disappointed by the story of chimpanzees, because in the end they also have the ability to be cruel or be mad or even evil.
Yeah. No, we can be evil. They're brutal, aggressive, but for me, evil is like you can have somebody sitting calmly and nicely, sitting with a fire or sitting in the sunshine, planning to torture people miles away. Cold-blooded, evil, desire to harm. Chimps just do it in the heat of the moment. They just respond to something out there, like other chimpanzees invading their territory, or they think they might be going to invade their territory, and so they look at each other and touch each other and look over there, and then off they go. So it's reacting to a stimulus. They can't sit, at least I don't think so, and just sit and think, oh, well, tomorrow or the next day we'll go on a raid. And no, it's not like that.
But I read the book, and when I read about passion, I was really angry.
Yes, so were we.
But do you think we have hope, or is in our nature war and fight?
Well, I think probably we've inherited it from some common ancestor, chimp human, and we brought these characteristics. Remember, we've also brought love and compassion, which the chimps have. And what's different is this amazing intellect we have. So we should be able to use that intellect to suppress the bad part, and most people do. It's just the few who unleash this horror of war and violence and murder, and
You changed the paradigm of animals. How was this process for you? The fact that suddenly in academia they started to talk about emotions, they started to name animals. So the way science is done in nature is different now.
Yeah.
But I guess it must be a confrontation, right? There's been like a collision of ideas there.
At the beginning, yes.
How was it?
Well, it was interesting. See, remember, I never wanted to be a scientist. Leakey said I had to go and get a degree. I was shocked and horrified to be told I'd done everything wrong. But because of my dog teaching me, I knew the professors, for all their erudite knowledge, I knew they were wrong. I knew that animals did have personalities, and at least many of them can solve problems. And, we know so much about animal intellect now, certainly emotions, happiness, sadness, fear. And so I just quietly went on talking about the chimps the way they are. And then Hugo van Lawick, his film, started going around, sort of corroborating everything that I said. And I never confronted the scientists. I just let them, But gradually they had to change. And so they changed from within. But unfortunately, there's still many people, who, I don't know if they believe, but they treat animals as though they're just things, commodities, like the factory farms and people who go sports hunting, that sort of thing.
So you discovered that there is not such a gap between animals and humans. Is there anything that humans have that is singular or make us different?
Well, it's this intellect. STARMUS says it all. Investigating the cosmos. Animals can't do that. And I think it started because we learned at some point in our history, we developed this way of speaking with words. So we can sit down and plan the future. We can share ideas, which is what STARMUS is all about. And so, the really good example is there's this beautiful waterfall at Gombe. And very often, particularly the males, when they approach, their hair comes out, and instead of avoiding the streams are only about that deep, but usually they jump over them or from stone to stone. But when they get near this waterfall, it's making a thundering noise because it's falling 80 feet onto the narrow, rocky bottom of the stream. And as they get closer, the noise gets louder. And then because for thousands of years it's fallen through the rock, it's made a channel. And so there's always air displaced, there's always a breeze. And the chimps do this amazing waterfall display, swaying from foot to foot, bending down, picking up big rocks, hurling them ahead. And maybe for 10 minutes. And then at the end, if you're in the right place, sometimes you see them sitting and they're looking up where the water comes from. And their eyes are following it down. And, following like so. What is this stuff? It's always coming. It's always going, but it's always here. And to me, if they had the power of speech and they could sit and discuss what is this thing, it might lead to one of the early animistic religions, the worship of stars and sun and so on.
Uh-huh. Wow, I really like that. So you also mentioned about these chimpanzees few times dancing like in a religious way. Do you think also religion is part of our nature?
Well, it seems that it sort of is, because they haven't yet discovered any people who don't have some kind of religion, worship something. So it does seem, I think, and maybe it's that same feeling of awe that the chimps have with the waterfall, which early humans have, which indigenous people have, or nature. I mean, I feel it. I feel when I'm out in nature, sometimes completely filled with wonder, looking up at the stars at night.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you see the Northern Lights?
Not these days.
No, I didn't either.
No.
Yeah, but that sort of thing, I mean, magic.
Yeah.
Wonder. If you didn't know anything and you hadn't read anything and you just were born and you'd somehow grown up among the animals and you saw something like that, you can imagine how you'd feel.
You also talk in your books about your spirituality or this kind of sense. It's been going on. How was this travel of spiritualism in your life? It's been always there. It appeared. Any experience, particular experience, any memory about it?
Well, I grew up in a Christian family, and we went to church sometimes, and sometimes I would just feel some kind of presence, especially in a very old cathedral. And then that same feeling, it's more or less the same out in nature for me. Great spiritual something.
And you sense it also?
Spiritual power. And people call God or Buddha or whatever you happen to have grown up with.
There is also the same feeling in physics. Einstein, they have this sense of order.
Yes.
There is something beyond everything.
Yes.
Not especially as someone or...
No, but a power.
Yeah.
And that there's meaning behind the universe. That's coming out more and more now. And it's very interesting. I met a group of people, and they've started an organization called, well, never mind what it's called, but it's about people who've experienced, who've physically died but then come back, and the experiences they had. And this one man is a neurologist, a neurosurgeon, and he had patients who would, die and then come back, and he never believed them. But it happened to him. And he wrote a whole book about it, and it's quite extraordinary. So what I learned from this group of people was that many scientists who, when they've got their job and their profession and, they get their salaries and everything, they poo-poo all that. But as soon as they retire, they change. And then they tell what they really think, which is very different. So you always think scientists always speak the truth. Well, they may not lie, but they don't let on how they really feel, except the very brave ones.
Yeah. In physics, we have something similar. This awe when you see the sky and the stars. There is a said that a little bit of knowledge gets you apart from God, but a bigger knowledge, and I think science is a way to understand our presence in the universe in a bigger form. So my question is, because there are also these spiritual ideas, but also in science that everything is connected. Do you feel this connection of every being in the universe?
Well, I do. I mean, nature teaches you that there's a connection and that one little piece doesn't work in isolation. It's always part of something bigger, and that bigger is part of something else.
And how do you deal with these ideas in academia? I mean, talking about spirituality in science is not always welcome.
Well, I didn't need to. When I was doing my thesis, but I did talk about the chimps having a sense of wonder. And then, of course, when I wrote my books, I could say just what I thought.
Yeah, and in fact, this is something for me really impressive, because I never thought the animals could have this awe about the universe. And then I would also like to know about this experience with the chimpanzees. Is any special moment that any memory that you have really in your heart?
Well, there are some, actually. I can never forget, the first baby whose progress I could study. Knew him when he was just a couple of weeks old, Flo's baby Flint. And the chimps weren't completely used to me, but they were beginning to realize I wasn't frightening and that I was okay. And when little Flint just began to walk on his own, he was 5 months old, and he was looking at me with these big eyes, and he's coming towards me, and his mother is a little bit nervous. She's got her lips like this, and she's got her hand under his tummy, but she lets him come, and he's looking into my eyes, and he reaches out and touches my lips. That was so special.
Wow. Imagine, wow. And you said in the books that you learn also about breeding with the animals, about how to teach a kid. How was the experience of?
Well, I learned from the chimps one thing which I thought, when I have a baby, they play with their children and they have fun, they enjoy them, and I thought, well, I'm going to do that too. And then the other thing is that up until the age when the chimp child knows that something is wrong, like mummy is termiting and infant is grabbing her tool, and that's very irritating for the mother. And a lot of human mothers would slap the child or shout at the child. The chimp mother doesn't do that because the child hasn't yet learned that it's wrong. It's not being naughty, it's just playing. So she goes on fishing for termites, but with this hand she tickles the child, who begins to laugh and roll about and leaves her alone to go on fishing. And that's so distracting, I think. It's just as important for us. Once the child knows, then you can discipline the child. But before, they're just playing and exploring and learning. So this idea of distraction gives the child something else. Of course, today, unfortunately, when the mother wants to distract the child from something naughty, they give them an iPhone or something, which is just unfortunate.
Another thing that I'm really curious about is the fact that you didn't go through an academic life, and this posed me the question about how important is also having a view outside academy in science. How academy needs people from outside that also get involved in science.
Yeah, well, think of, if you think of IT and you think of all the people in Silicon Valley, most of them hadn't even finished high school. So, it's not necessary. For me, what was necessary, or what I loved, I had an absolutely wonderful supervisor in Cambridge, and he was one of the top 3 ethologists in the world, European. And he taught me how to think and write in a logical way. And I loved that. I love, so you think everything through before you write it and before you make up your mind. And he taught me how to write things. Like one beautiful example, I'd written, poor Robert Hind, he must have been very pissed off with me at the beginning because I was so naive. I knew nothing about science. And I'd written that how the mother Flo had a daughter, Fifi, and then Flint. And Fifi was totally fascinated by this new baby, and she would always be trying to touch him. And if any other youngster came up, Fifi would get furious and wave her arms and shout at them and chase them away. And I said Fifi was jealous. This is my baby brother. And Robert Hind said, but you can't say that because you can't prove it. And I said, well, no, I can't, but I'm sure she was. What shall I say? And he said, and I've taught this to many students, I should say, Fifi behaved in such a way that if she was a human child, we would say she was jealous. That is very clever.
Changing the sense of the sentence.
Everything is true, but you're not saying Fifi was jealous. You're saying if she was a human child, we would say she was jealous. That's really clever.
In your view, we have now a lot of wars and everything. What is going on with humanity in your view?
I don't know. The West started this crazy idea of unlimited economic development on a planet with finite natural resources and growing human populations and growing numbers of cattle and other animals that we eat. And I don't really know what's happened to us, but it's shocking. It's 110 conflicts, armed conflicts around the world right now. Is it because there's too many of us? Is it basically down to the chimps struggling over territorial, struggling over?
There is this famous quote by Hobbes saying that, I don't know in English how it is, but humans were wolves for ourselves. Do you agree? We are so wolves, aggressive to ourselves. Is human?
Each other, yeah.
Do you agree that humans, we are the worst enemy of another human?
Yes, I think we are. And we have that, as you say, that same aggressive tendency that the chimps have. And their fighting is all over territory. And also this tendency we have, many animals, I think, the in-group and the out-group. So STARMUS might say that everybody here, we're an in-group, we're all together, we're all wanting the same thing. But those people over there fighting a war in Ukraine, that's another group that's outside and we're aggressive to them. And it's so obvious with the chimps. Like when that 4-year war started, the worst thing about it was that the battle was these males here fighting males there who originally were part of the same group. But then these males moved south and gradually there was a separation. And so now this is the in-group and that's the out-group, and the out-group is to be attacked. And we've just separated ourselves into in-groups and out-groups with religion, with language, as well as territory.
But we're still evolving, right? And somehow...
Hopefully we're still evolving.
for worse or for better, do you think, or tendency? Do you think...
Well, it looks as though we sort of got better, but now, we seem to be on a downward path. And that's why I'm traveling all this time, because, we've got to start going up again. We've got to start changing or we're doomed.
But then there is this possibility of transhumanity or posthumanity, where probably there are people theorizing that in the future there could be some intelligence, artificial intelligence that could dominate, or the robots. How do you feel about this?
It depends how it's used. I mean, artificial intelligence is a tool, and already it's being used for bad purposes, places like China. So, but on the other hand, used wisely, it can probably help find out more about how to deal with problems. I don't know. I mean, at the moment I feel scared of AI. Especially like children, you know, they're doing an exam. They can ask AI to write an essay for them. And AI will write an essay. My son's always telling me, he said, look, I asked AI to write a poem about something or other. This is what happened. And so, isn't it going to stop children using their brain? Because when I wrote an essay, we had to go and look it up, we had to go to the library, and then it got easier because you could Google it, although Google is definitely not always right. But now with AI, you don't have to investigate anything, you just ask a question. Isn't that going to do something to our brain? Surely.
Yeah.
Make the brain lazy.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, there are people that think that in the future, artificial intelligence could dominate us somehow, and made to humans what humans have done to chimpanzees, like being superior. And
No, I don't quite go that far. I think there's enough highly intelligent and ethical people who will stop that going that far. Because, I mean, there is a lot of talk about it now. There's concern, there's worry about what's going to happen with AI. So more and more big brains are getting together to find ways to control it. But what happens in Europe is one thing, what happens in Asia is another. And
yeah.
I'm unable to predict. I'm glad I'm 90, to be honest.
And going back to chimpanzees, what are the big mysteries about them today?
Well, not many mysteries. You know, they've been studied so carefully and so long in different parts of Africa and captivity. But there are some funny little things, but it's not really a mystery. There are behaviors which seem to become part of a culture, like we've got males at Gombe now who are killing their own infants, which doesn't make sense. And is it something they've learned from each other? Something that, I don't know. But that's not a real mystery, it's just one or two individuals.
And about conscience, what, they have conscience of themselves. But this is something that goes through another animals, like
Oh, I think so.
this is something that is
Dolphins,
widespread.
whales, elephants. You know, I haven't studied it, but more and more studies are coming out suggesting that animals do have this consciousness. And
do you have an idea of what conscience is?
not really. I mean, it's knowing yourself as separate from the rest of the world and separate from other individuals of your species. So in other words, I'm me.
Yeah. I have a final question about your life. What would you say it was the happiest moment? Do you have a moment that you remember especially like the happiest?
I don't know about the happiest, but I had very, very happy moments in the forest, very happy, for different reasons. Once I kept very still, very early days on this bush bug. It's about the size of a goat, beautiful little antelope. And I was sitting on a tree stump, And she came towards me. She knew, I was dead still, so she couldn't make out what I was, and the wind was blowing from her to me, and so I just kept very, very still. She came right up, and her velvety nose touched my knee, and then startled and gave her bark of alarm and bounded away, but it was very magic.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Jane. Do you want to add anything?
Well, don't you think I should add that if we want to get out of the mess we're in, people should understand that their life does make a difference, and that every day we live, we make some impact on the planet, and if we all choose ethically and wisely to do the right thing, that could make a huge difference.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's important. And you know about the Institute in Spain, don't you? And our youth program there, Roots and Shoots, which is spreading all over.
Yeah, it's a nice work with young people.
Young people, and even we're getting adults now, forming groups like the staff of a big corporation. Yeah. And then if it's an international one, they link their children with children of the staff over there, and over there, and over there. So the children are beginning to understand more about other cultures and other countries, and understand that more important than the color of our skin and our language, even our religion, is the fact we're all human beings.
Globalization has also good things.
Yeah.
In the end.
Yes.
I have these books. Could you sign them for me?
Yes, I will.
I'm really interested in how, in the end, I'm a particle physicist, and how this links to other fields. In the end, with particle physics, we try to understand every phenomenon in the world, but this is a challenge because...
Yes, but aren't these new physics just finding all the time that gets closer and closer to spirituality and away from hard science?
This is the point, that we have tried to understand this deep phenomena like conscience with particles, and in the end nothing appeared, which is good and bad.
Yes.
And the only thing that happens that it creates a big mystery, because there are only questions, not answers. But I think this is much better. I think life is more interesting with mysteries.
It is much more interesting.
Right?
David, he was so handsome. There's never been... That's David Greybeard.
Why did you recognize him?
I think this he probably got a little bit of food out on his lip.
Yeah.
Because they suck the juice out and then they push it out and move on.
You say your favorite one?
Oh yes, the one who let me come close to him. The first one showed me term, and that's Fifi and Flint, the one who touched my nose. He's laughing because you saw what I'd written.
Yeah. Together we can make this a better world, but I doubt we shall ever understand the mystery. And I agree. We have to approach it, but probably never solve it.
I love that little phrase in the Bible that says, "Now we see through a glass dimly, then face to face." I love that.
Yeah.
We have to wait till we die and then face to face.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Pues esto ha sido todo. Muchas gracias a Garik, a STARMUS, a todas las personas que forman parte de ello, a Breso, a Alejandro, a Iñaki, porque para mí es un privilegio y la verdad que es un regalo de la vida haber compartido este tiempo con esta mujer. Hasta pronto.